Alright, so we are right back into another Dragon Ball Super card game video, and I've been dreading this video for a while, but I think it's about that time. I think it is about that time. Cue the music. Yes, this is time for the Law and Order Dragon Ball Super card game unit. The reason for that is because now, today I'm going to go ahead and talk through the future of the ban list, the ERATTA list, the limit list, all of that. And the reason for that is because of the tyranny of Super Shenron, the overall negative effects of how people are taking this as far as not going to locals, as far as being happy or not. We even have Peter Kantani, beloved pillar of the community, not even wanting to play within the meta, saying that it's just not that great and dressing up, going completely mad. We have our one and only Joey just simply putting it out there that is just completely toxic and just taking all of the hits for us when none of us wanted to. We have other people saying get good, when in reality, no game is perfect. We're all entitled to use our money and use our wallets as consumers and actually have an opinion about something. It's not a crime. And of course, these last few events have still have a longing effect as far as Super Shenron. In the next one, it's going to be Indie. It's going to be ARG, Indie, I do believe, and as well as Origins. With both of them coming up, and as well as the multicolored cards coming up, there's going to be a few changes, but I can almost guarantee you before that actual regional start, sometime in June, late July, or early July, we're probably going to see a change in the format outside of the multicolor list, and I think that will involve a ban, limit, or errata change within the list that Bandai provides. Yes, they just came off of vacation for Golden Week. If you didn't know, Japan celebrates it every year. I'm about to say every week, but for 1 week. But we're gonna see it, and if you don't believe that, hey, that's okay. I might be wrong, but I'm letting you know now. I'm pretty sure there's gonna be some sort of change. I just feel it in my gut. Same thing when I made that Super Saiyan 3 video way back when. I wasn't complaining or anything like that. I wasn't saying anything negative about it. I was just flat out saying that, hey, this is kind of ridiculous, isn't it? That we can untap 3, ramp 2 versus the other opponent, and then awaken super quickly with all the cards that we have, and it just didn't work out. That's how I feel about this leader. And what I'm going to do before I talk about anything else is actually break down each kind of quote-unquote problem card outside of or within the Super Shenron list. I'm going to go through the ban, which means obviously you can't play it at all forever. Limit, as far as limiting to 3 to 1, and as well as errata, which I do believe, I would think that we're not going to do any erratas until we have another printing error or something that's completely dumb, like Triple Flash Shenron, that type of thing. But I'm going to go through it anyway as far as a possibility. And of course, let's start with the leader itself. The thing is crazy. When it was released, I can almost guarantee if you watched my video way back when, as far as overviewing the new black cards in set 6, Shenron just looked dumb. Like it was like adding everything good about a Wish leader and then giving it another turn, because that seems fair. When regarding to Super Saiyan 3, and I know people hate when things are compared like Mecha or Super Saiyan 3 or whatever, I think in the respect of thinking about Super Saiyan 3, that the fact that we were able to untap 3 and think that was normal at the end of the turn, yes, TN is around, I understand, it is the same thing as this taking another turn after your initial one, especially since it is confirmed that it does affect 0 to 3 as far as time rules, which is just insane. Not only that, it's just silly. So when regarding the ban, if we look at that first, I think that would probably be the most likely thing that will happen to this leader. Limiting, no point. You can only play 1 leader. And errata, I don't think there's anything to errata. This was intended. This was the leader, and as well as how it operates. I think personally it's a really good hand control leader. I think it's a really good cheeky ramp leader, right? But everything else put with it, with all the Wish mechanics and as well as Explorer Bulma, all the other stuff, makes it a little bit broken. What's my verdict? Ban. I'm definitely gonna get copyrighted. Who does this affect? No one, because we no longer have a leader that can take an extra turn, and everybody can live happily ever after, and everybody can use the OG Shenron or Purunga for degenerate wish plays, but not take an extra turn. I think that is the biggest thing when it comes down to it. Yes, there is not one card that effectively kill the entire deck or the engine or etc., but this is probably going to be a good place to start. I can't think of a good scenario where I can legitimately tell a new person, hey, I'm going to play this leader, and just to let you know, as long as I have these conditions, I'm going to take an extra turn. I can't say that that is ever going to be okay to say, and as well as accepted for really anybody. And again, you got to realize that people don't want to really deal with this on a local level, and things really, like, you really need to think about not only on a regional level as far as big events, but also on a local level. If you don't have people going locally, there's no reason to play for fun, or at least to get to practice. Same thing for online. People still need to actually practice and go through all that, and that in turn goes into the LGSs who have to support the game and have to buy the product. If no one wants to buy the product because of the format, then they fail. And if you only have competitive players, that's going to be a very small amount if there are limited options as far as that goes. So just keep that in mind, and as well as these are all just opinion. This is not fact. Which brings me to Explorer Bulma. Now this is a crazy card for this deck, simply because it can mill 2, it can untap 2, and it can draw 1. So not only does it fuel its ultimate, it continues plays for untapping 2, and it can also draw 1 for the advantage. In and of itself, as a 3-drop, which effectively is a 1-drop, it isn't that bad. You know, when it came out, I loved the card. Like, it was one of the cards that I really loved. Way back when I was building Green Yellow Lord Slug with the Universe 7 representative engine, or Universe 7 engine, this was one of the cards that I really liked because of the certain cards that I played with it, and it was just good just to untap 1, just to tap 1 and draw 1. So I think overall it is a really cool card on paper, but with this deck it is crazy. Now if we talk about ban, I think it would completely erase the existence of Bulma, because this in any other deck, any other wish leader, it can make it really, really good. So if we got rid of Shenron and kept Bulma at 4, all these other wish leaders will still be able to do Bulma things with Child's Wish and all these other cards. You don't have to mill 2, but you can still untap 2 and draw 1 and still do degenerate things. As far as limiting, it would prevent the consistency of the deck and limit this from being played in other wish decks. I think this is more useful than any other limited card, that being like Unyielding, but can also be used for recursion, and it just kind of does so much. So if it is at 1 or at 2 or whatever, it can still be played. It would just be one of those plays that you have to save until later in the game. Having this at 4, and as well as Child's Wish at 4, just makes it too consistent and makes it too much as far as doing too many things per turn. And I think ERATTA, it wouldn't affect this too much, but I do kind of like the idea of this being only being played from hand instead of being when you play this card. And so when you play this card, it'll be played when you play this card with your from your hand. I think that'd be pretty good as far as to neuter the card and make it effectively useful as a ban. Not many people play this with the Bulma archetype. You know, the Kid Goku leader is pretty cool, but it's just not that great. So that's really the only thing that's kind of useful for it. And as well as the Bulma engine isn't that great as well. So I would think it would just go right back to where it was a couple formats ago. What's my verdict? Limit to 1. Who does this affect? So this directly affects the consistency of the deck for Super Shenron, and Super Shenron still existing in this world still means that he can still take an extra turn, but now has to look at other options to make sure that it is consistent. So things that will mill you out or mill it out, and as well as get that draw, which is kind of hard to find for anything else. I think Explorer Bulma is definitely the heart and soul for Super Shenron. When you take that away, or at least make it less consistent throughout the turns, it makes it a lot harder to do the things that it does so early on into the game. If Bulma can be used only once or twice instead of multiple times in a turn, again, it's just less consistent. This not only prevents the mill, but also prevents the untap and draw, which the mill and untap is probably the best for Super Shenron, and as well as other wish leaders. So this would be something that you would have to save it again for a big play to untap and continue. But you can only do it once or twice, right? Preface of Discovery Goku is probably the next best thing, just without the draw and as well as it being at best a good 15k attacker. All right, next up, Dragon Radar. I think Dragon Radar is the third piece of Super Shenron. It probably goes Super Shenron, well, I would say second piece, I guess. So Super Shenron being the leader, Explorer Bulma being the first piece, Dragon Radar being the second, and the third being Child's Wish. Those are really the three types of things, along with any other engine you throw it in, which now, with the best win con in the game, Hide Mastery, is the one that's being thrown in. And Dragon Radar kind of makes everything else go. It makes everything else more consistent. You see more cards, you see more desires, you can use the desires more often, etc. just for one energy. When this came out, I was saying, like, this is a really good card. A lot of people didn't like it because it was an extra card that sometimes just wasn't all that great. Regarding the ban, I don't really see this being banned, honestly. I think, yes, it will lose consistency, but Child's Wish and as well as Explorer Bulma can still be used effectively without it, right? The only thing is that it just can't continue it from the drop. It would have to be played out a little bit more intricately in order to continue plays and to abuse Child's Wish and as well as Explorer Bulma. But in turn, if this was banned, it also hurts the consistency and the possibility of being good for any other wish leader. This means like Blue Gohan not being able to restand a lot, Oolong not being able to get his 1-drop desires back, Dende without his 2-drop desires, even though we do have Tagoma, and all these other wish leaders that we just don't play. This gives it more reason not to play it, and especially since Dragon Radar is really mostly used for drawing 2, and at best maybe getting 1 desire. This also goes for limiting, and I also don't think there's any point of erratating the card, as there's probably not a good errata for it. My verdict? None of the above. I actually don't see Radar being the major issue. Yes, it does create more consistency in a lot of different decks, but in and of itself. But I think it's at best a plus 1 to 2 draw, or pay more energy to play it if you don't use the leader effect, like the desires like Child's Wish, World Peace, etc. But I will reserve this opinion for the future, as it may change with a future ban or limitless. Oh baby, Child's Wish. So this one's a little bit of a tough one, right? I wanna say that Child's Wish is like, I have a little bit of bias of saying Child's Wish is probably my favorite desire. There's just so many cool things that you can do with it, a lot of degenerate things you can do with it, and that is kind of shown with Explorer Bulma. And I would also definitely recommend to watch Joey's Crossworld TCG's video on it and the controversial ideas and comments below it. That's always fun. But my quick thoughts on it, like I said, it can enable to do a lot of different and crazy plays. Regarding bans, probably a little too harsh. I think Child's Wish opens a lot of different lines of play that we didn't even know existed with a lot of different wish leaders. But I think Bandai is fully aware of Child's Wish and the capability due to the immediate change in attack power. With one specific example being Path to Greatness being a 19k 3-drop instead of a 15k 3-drop. They're really aware of that card and as well as the implications behind it. Limiting may be a little bit more reasonable in order to cripple Super Shenron and as well as any other possible deck that can abuse the same Explorer Bulma or Preface combo. This will definitely hurt the consistency and the viable abuse that it can take out. This also leaves Shenron Buu, Aoi Dende, etc. to wreak havoc on the meta, as long as it, you can actually get to it, until the meta figures itself out. Errata. So now the only errata I can really think of is what's being suggested previously, and which is limiting desires to once per turn. This will kind of have the same effect as Dragon Radar, crippling all wish decks and limiting deck design. So it's just like most leaders outside of the ones I mentioned just won't be played. So simply due to the fact that it's just not as good anymore. It's the same thing as Cell Chain. You have to kind of get to it and use it once. My verdicts? Limit it to 1. Listen, to make sure that a deck doesn't do as well as it previously does, i.e. Super Shenron, you have to make it difficult to play, or more difficult or less viable to play. One of those things is consistency, and I keep mentioning that. When you limit this to 1, it can't be as consistent as previously before. Yes, you do have options to search for it, but it will slow down the game in the process. So you want to limit the possibilities of being able to get to that. Being at 1 is very, very hard. And yes, if Explorer Bowman existed with this being at 1, it still can happen with a good hand and as well as radar, but you still have to draw into these things and it won't be as consistent. You might be forced to actually dig for the child's wish or play out Boma on turn 3 as many times as you can. A strong, consistent strategy is what wins big events, not how broken it is. You can be all broken, you can be broken all you want. It's just that if you can't pull it off consistently, it's no point. But those are the main 3. You know, if they really wanted to cripple something, or at least this deck in general, they should start with the leader and as well as the Explorer Boma. This will kind of prevent anything in the future. Again, abusing Explorer Boma and as well as with Child's Wish. When you reduce this to 1 and you ban this, it's going to have a little bit of a better effect overall within the card pool than it would be just to outright ban everything. That's just my opinion, of course. Now I want to go ahead and talk about the other cards that kind of go with Super Shenron but doesn't really need to. These are just cards in general. Path to Greatness. So shout out to Eggman for making that one video. Please go check that out if you haven't watched that already. Make some good points. I've never really liked Path to Greatness. This is why I haven't spent money on it, but also because it's so expensive. I think there's a lot of things that kind of go into this and as well as the history behind it, but this really made Swap viable simply because of the Sparking 7 barrier and 4 cost energy. Bandai obviously wants the game to end at turn 3 or 4. That's the ideal point. That is because in a 30-minute sort of segment or 30-minute game with a best of 3, that is the best thing to kind of have as a goal and as well as to keep under time constraints, but also have a pretty good game during that time. Because we are in a best of 3 format, or at least a best of 3 game, Bandai really has to think about that, and that's why they have this at 4 energy and as well as all these other cards being win cons at 4 or 5 energy. Now, for Path to Greatness, because it's so good, it's kind of hard to really touch on without just saying ban. So regarding the ban, as much as I really want it to be banned, I don't think it would be really feasible. Bandai really provided kind of a shit show of how the promos were distributed? Okay. And people already spent tons of money on this card and as well as the engine. I don't think banning is really the option without a lot of different outcry for it. I also don't think there is no point of limiting it either. And that's because Successor Hope gets this for free and you can play 4 of those. At worst, it's a card in your drop or another Successor Hope target or energy. And we also have a lot of other options like Planet Vegeta, Universe 7 Representative, 1-Drop Goku, etc. to search it anywhere but life. And if you're banking on the fact that this would be in the life if it was limited at 1, people will just take life until they get it. Like that's just how it's going to be. And it's also going to be less likely in life before anything else. There's only 8 cards out of the deck. It's a low chance for it to be in there, if anything. But it is a possibility. As far as errata, the only errata I can really think of outside removing barrier, which is not going to happen, is to limit it to Yellow Saiyans only. And this will ensure that Broly remains the best leader for it until something else comes out, which I don't believe he will. Something will come out that's better than that. And make sure that this is the only archetype for it in the future. This is good because it actually has a bad matchup to Baby Vegeta, and it can lose to it pretty consistently. The difference between Baby Vegeta versus Broly and Baby Vegeta versus Super Shenron is because it has to work twice as hard because of the second turn. It can swing and try to remove all of the pieces and etc., but it also has the pressure of all of the multiple attacks due to the wish mechanics and as well as swap. Yes, Broly can do those things, but because of the nature of the deck and as well as the leader, it has to take life and it has to do things less than the wish leader itself. Plus, it has less answers. Being a black leader, it has a lot less answers in regards to Haru Haru, in regards to Tao, in regards to etc. All these other answer cards. So this is really hard. Plus, for Broly, there's always Cronoa if you're trying to use Shigesh. So there's a lot more answers to it, and I think when putting this, or at least the engine, into Broly, it's a lot better if they do try to errata this card. My verdict? None of the above. Yes, I do think this is a problem card, but I think it's either going to be this or the best win con in the game, which is, or one of the best, which is Hana Mastery. And if I had to choose, I would go with that one instead. Because it has a less likelihood of being search or tutored. Gun to my head, it should be banned. So talking about Hidden Mastery, so this is a really good card, and it always has been a really good card. The only benefit to this is that it doesn't have barrier. So yes, get Goku, and again, I mentioned Zarbon before, can beat this, and compared to Gogeta 7, right? But previously without Path of Greatness, this was an okay card because you had to wait so long to get to this point. And with the introduction of Yellow Broly and as well as Super Shenron, it just made this the maximum power it can possibly be, especially since it has Deflect, especially since it has Dual Attack and Triple Strike, and especially since it can ignore barrier and as well as tap down energy. So it does a lot. And again, this is probably going to be the card to look at before Path of Greatness. And the reason why is because when regarding ban, speaking of this, this won't be banned if Path of Greatness isn't. So they wouldn't ban Path of Greatness. Well, they wouldn't ban this if they don't ban Path of Greatness. If they ban this, Path of Greatness has no target other than the secret rare. So there's no point. But this is supposed to be Swap's Swap's biggest win con other than the secret. And in its old slow playing curve, later into the game, like turn 5, around there, basically, this is perfectly fine. I don't mind that. It's just the fact that it is turn 4, and as well as take another turn, and it is just difficult to play against. But limiting, this is a little bit more peculiar, because now the only good searcher for Hidden Mastery right now is probably going to be Universe 7 representative. I'm probably okay with that, other than like the one drop Goku, which I doubt someone will be playing in their deck if it's mono yellow, unless they play Universe 7 Frieza, which is I'm okay with yet again. This being limited is probably okay with my thoughts on the game, or what a game ender should look like, or a win con should look like. Being at 1 forces you to kind of search down your win con early game and work your way up to it. This is another reason why, you know, this card does a lot, right? And if you put like a secret tag on it, or an ultimate tag on it, I would not fault you. Like I honestly would not fault you, and this is the reason why these ultimates are really good in what they do. Previously with Vegito and Super Saiyan 4 Goku, they're very hard to get to, but now that this is so accessible, it can merit an ultimate tag just being at 1. Just think about it like that. And when you work your way up to a win con and you actually do find it, this can actually force other decks to warp it in foreseeing hit, or use hand destruction like Slug, or things of that nature. It just becomes more difficult to play and much less consistent to end the game and use Victory Strike. I think, yeah, if you use like Swamp and Senzu Bean and all the other stuff, you just took away Hidden Mastery, it would be a little bit of an issue still, but at least you don't have to worry about 3 of your energy or battle cards ignoring barrier being tapped down. And as far as ERATTA, I think it should consider the same, Yellow Saiyans only. My verdict? I think it should be limited at 1 as well. Again, my thoughts are the same. If you work your way up to getting the card and you make sure it's hard to get to it, then you should be fine. Now this is a suggestion, Crisis Crusher that is. I do believe Scott Slater and as well as Eggman, we were talking about it on stream, just Crisis Crusher being on the ban or limited list. I can kind of see this being banned. Now just hear me out, because I think initially this card was a really good idea, just to have an answer to anything aggro, especially with the Unyielding still not being limited. I do believe just right after this was revealed, it was still unlimited, but now it prevents the only thing that really hurts these decks that untap and as well as have so many actions per turn. Crisis Crusher says that both Whis and Burgos will die anytime that this is on the board. So when you take this away, Super Shenron and others like Soul Striker, Golden Frieza have to use other options like 2-star Ball and Frieza biding his time, etc. This may or may not help them again, but does make their life harder. Limit, same thing as ban, just less consistent. And ERATTA, I don't think there's really ERATTA needed. My verdict, probably should be banned. I know that sounds kind of silly and probably won't happen. I think a lot of people won't really agree with me, but just kind of think about the points and come back to me later. And of course, there's other cards like Haru Haru, Victory Strike, Bad Ring, TN, etc. that probably should be considered and looked at, but honestly, I don't really have the time to go through all that, and as well as I don't think they're as bad as I might think, you know. But what about the future? Do we, if we do slow down the game, do we still worry about Gogeta 7 as well as Shenron? Do we still worry about Janemba and the fact that it's the only card that can really mill outside of the Janemba cards and multicolored cards? Do we still worry about Green Broly, or is his strategy too linear now as far as for it to be consistent, and or what? Do we worry about Scuffle Time and the fact that this man can, in himself and as well as Fauna Spirit, can attack multiple times, probably as much as Super Shenron with the Blue Dende leader? It's just that the caveat, if you look at my Scuffle Time video, is that you take so much life and you're kind of forced to do that. So there's a little bit more of a risk factor there. Do we still take a look at Bardock the Progenitor? Do we still say that this is kind of a strong card, which I do believe it is. I think is one of the strongest cards in the game, and probably one of the best early cards in the game. Even though you have to take a life, it is still really good. Do we consider the multi-cards to be something that's going to change up the meta? Whether if we don't get a ban or limitless or errata, do the multicolor cards or are the multicolor cards enough to actually make a difference? And then, of course, in general, do we even consider more answer cards? Are we waiting until the multi-cards, the anniversary set, and as well as set 7 months from now in order to have a successful meta? Are we waiting on Bandai to actually say something about that? I don't know. I don't think that's going to be the best play. I don't really like answer cards in general. This is why we have so many leaders that aren't red, because it doesn't have that much of a advantage, and as well as all the blue leaders that have a fallout and people switching to black leaders, just like I was saying before, because of all these answer cards. When we force out all of these cards that make these decks so strong and consistent, we're probably going to be forced to be playing all these other decks. So it would be interesting to see that in turn. But I think I spoke enough. This is probably going to be the only, well, I won't say that. It's definitely not going to be the only video. The video after this will showcase Cell Chain versus Super Shenron to see how that fares against it, because a lot of people were talking about it. I most likely will be on No Counters, No Combos podcast talking about this as well, with all of our Super Tuber organization people. And I'm very curious to see what you believe in the comments below. Like, dislike, subscribe if you are new. I love you. I actually don't really like Law and Order. I actually think it's really bad acting, and it's just okay as a show. I'm so sorry, guys. I will see you in the next one. Later.
2 to the 1, from the 1 to the 3. I like good pussy and I like good trees. Smoke so much weed you wouldn't believe, and I get more ass than a toilet seat. 3 to the 1, from the 1 to the 3. I met a bad bitch last night in the D.